The stories presented in this video are real, but we have changed the characters' names and altered images to protect their identities. The creator of this video is not an investigative officer. These narratives have been sourced from various internet platforms. Our intent is not to accuse or target anyone in particular. Thank you for understanding.
In February 2008, the body of Trooper Lyla Porter, 38, was found in her house in Hanover, New Hampshire. The stunning fact of her affair with fellow State Trooper Alan Hayes was revealed during an investigation. A terrible tragedy resulted from a sequence of choices and betrayals that started in December 2007 in the New Hampshire State Police Barracks. Welcome to True Crime Stories Hub. In today's true crime documentary, we'll dive into the shocking case of Trooper Lyla Porter, whose tragic death was tied to a fellow officer's attempt to cover up a secret affair. Join us as we unravel the twists and turns of this heartbreaking story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more gripping true crime documentaries, right here on True Crime Stories Hub. Respected State Trooper Lyla Porter is discovered dead in her house at 6:45 a.m. Emily, her teenage daughter, finds her mother lying in the kitchen in a pool of blood with a single gunshot wound to her chest. In order to make it appear as though Lyla committed suicide, the service-issued firearm is prominently displayed close to her hand. Trembling, Emily dials 911. In contrast to her frantic sobs, the dispatcher gives calm directions. Detective Garrett Lynch, a tough investigator with 25 years of experience, leads the team of Hanover police and state investigators who show up promptly. The preliminary evaluation raises concerns. Despite the blood spatter, Lyla's service weapon is remarkably clean and shows no evidence of forced entry. The case of Trooper Lyla Porter's death felt odd from the beginning, even though Detective Garrett Lynch had spent decades solving criminal puzzles. He was uneasy not only because of the crime's savagery, but also because of the flaws in an otherwise flawless life. The 38-year-old Lyla Porter had established a solid reputation as a dedicated and moral state trooper. She had joined the force in her late 20s, juggling her desire to advance in a field that was dominated by men with her responsibilities as a single mother. Emily, her teenage daughter, was everything to her. Emily had always come first for Lyla, who balanced long hours and late-night casework with attending school functions, parent-teacher conferences, and their customary Friday night movie marathons. She was characterized by her co-workers as a motivated but kind individual who was always willing to offer assistance, even after a demanding patrol day. However, Lyla carried difficulties she didn't disclose behind her uniform and badge. She battled loneliness and a need for connection following her divorce. She couldn't resist being attracted to Alan Hayes, a senior trooper in his early 40s, when he started expressing interest in her. Alan was a well-respected and charming man with a perfect record and a composed authority that made him an ideal leader. He had been with the force for almost 20 years and was frequently commended for his ability to think quickly under pressure. Initially a cordial companionship among co-workers, it soon evolved into something more. On the surface, Alan's marriage to Deborah, a schoolteacher well known for her community service, appeared to be stable. Local newsletters frequently highlighted their family photos, which included 2 young sons. However, Alan had told Lyla about the problems in his marriage and how he felt stuck in a life that no longer fulfilled him. In response, Lyla shared her own anxieties, believing she was unlovable and would be alone for the rest of her life. Although intense, their relationship was tense. Lyla desired more than hushed vows and stolen moments. She started pressuring Alan to leave Deborah, saying that if he was prepared to take the chance, they might start a life together. Alan, though, was not sure. He had too much to lose: his pristine career, his community reputation, and a secure home. Detective Lynch and his crew started piecing together Lyla's complicated life by February 14, 2008. Emily Porter had reported hearing disagreements between her mother and a man she worked with during the early phases of the investigation. This hazy lead transmitted a shocking image. Lyla and Alan's explicit emails, which described a relationship that had become more erratic, came to light. During one conversation, Lyla bemoaned Alan's unwillingness to leave his wife. In another, Alan begged her to be patient with him, stating that he needed more time. The tone of their letters made it obvious that Alan had been feeling cornered and Lyla had been growing frustrated. On February 14, 2008, a chilly winter morning that reflected the tense atmosphere in the room, Detective Lynch summoned Alan Hayes in for questioning. When Alan showed up in uniform, his normally calm manner faltered when Lynch started to question him. Alan first denied having anything more than a business relationship with Lyla, but his determination broke when the emails and texts were shown. He acknowledged having the affair, but he played down its importance, calling it a mistake he had been working to avoid. The examination of Alan's personal life showed a man much more nuanced than his public image. Deborah and Alan were both in their early 20s when they were married. Deborah had been a teaching assistant at the police academy at the time, and he had been a new recruit. With family beach vacations, neighborhood cookouts, and Christmas cards sent to almost everyone they knew, their life together had seemed perfect. However, Alan's work took up most of his time, leaving little for his family. Deborah had filled the gap left by his departure by getting more involved in community causes. They ended up cohabitating in a kind but aloof manner. Alan had reached his breaking point due to the strain of juggling the demands of his work, his failing marriage, and the intensity of his affair with Lyla. In the weeks before Lyla's passing, his co-workers started to detect minor changes in him. During briefings, he was more likely to become agitated and snap at less experienced officers. In retrospect, it appeared to be a guy disintegrating under the weight of his secrets, while some blamed it on work-related stress. Meanwhile, the issue was further complicated by the autopsy results. Although the angle of entry rendered it impossible for Lyla to have fired the shot herself, the medical examiner determined that she had been shot at close range. Premeditation was suggested by the evidence, and the suicide was staged. All the evidence pointed to Alan, and the investigators were positive they were dealing with a homicide. On February 20, 2008, the forensic team made a breakthrough. A jacket found during a regular search of Alan Hayes' vehicle tested positive for gunpowder residue. Alan's automobile was found to be less than half a mile from Lyla's residence on the night of the murder, according to CCTV evidence from a nearby traffic camera. The timing was strange, but Alan insisted he had been on a normal patrol. Earlier, he had recorded off-duty hours. Another important piece of information was supplied by Emily Porter. She recounted hearing her mother and Alan quarrel in their kitchen a few days before to the murder in her second interview. Alan's tone had been low and strained, and Lyla's had been sharp and demanding, but Emily hadn't been able to hear every word. Following the altercation, Alan departed without saying goodbye, and Lyla rushed upstairs, slamming the door to her bedroom. An unmanageable relationship was depicted by the disagreement and Lyla's emails threatening to tell Deborah about their affair. Detective Lynch started to notice that things were starting to fit together. Alan had the reason, the resources, and now the chance to permanently quiet Lyla because he feared that his marriage and profession would fail. Alan was under increasing strain as the evidence grew. Formerly admiring co-workers started to turn away from him. Although the investigation specifics were kept under wraps, rumors circulated around the department and the media learned about it. Alan began to distance himself from everyone outside of his immediate family as his calm exterior began to falter. But Detective Lynch was not yet prepared to take Alan into custody. Knowing that the case would be closely examined, he wanted all of the evidence to be in place. While the study went on, one thing became evident. Alan Hayes was being surrounded by walls. Detective Garrett Lynch was aware that often the slightest information held the secret to solving a case. As the third week of the Lyla Porter murder investigation began, all of the leads led to Alan Hayes. One obvious question remained, though. Why now? Why would a man with a spotless record like Alan jeopardize everything in such a violent and irrevocable way? It turned out that his bank records contained the answer. A junior investigator had been tasked by Lynch with searching Alan's credit reports, bank statements, and financial history. The team was shocked by what they learned on March 1, 2008. Alan's wife, Deborah Hayes, had inherited an incredible $500,000 from her late father, a wealthy businessman, only a month prior. The inheritance, which was a life-altering sum, was deposited straight into Alan and Deborah's joint account. There was a catch, though. Alan would not be able to access that money at all if Deborah filed for divorce. This insight provided a fresh perspective on Alan's behavior. His financial survival was now at risk, not simply his marriage or image. There would have been disastrous consequences if Lyla had actually carried out her threats to reveal their affair. Without a doubt, Deborah would have abandoned him, and Alan's career would have suffered irreversibly. Alan's desperation seems to have reached a breaking point when he realized that he would lose everything. However, a fresh cloud of suspicion appeared as the team was starting to establish its case against Alan. The woman at the center of Alan's possible unraveling, Deborah Hayes, was also made a suspect. Deborah had remained silent during the inquiry, presenting a cool, collected front. She had admitted to detectives that she had spent the evening of February 11, 2008, at home with her kids, assisting them with their schoolwork and getting ready for a church charity event. However, as Lynch and his group dug further, her story started to show weaknesses. On March 1, 2008, a witness reported seeing a car that looked like Deborah's parked close to Lyla's house the night of the murder. There were enough specifics in the description to make people wonder. Deborah's car was a black sedan with a bumper sticker promoting a nearby Christian school. When the chronology coincided with the estimated moment of death, the prospect of Deborah confronting Lyla suddenly materialized. Investigators started to re-evaluate Deborah's possible involvement in the crime. Was it possible for her to learn of the affair and act independently? Her motivation was undeniable. Her marriage, her family, and her meticulously planned life were all betrayed by the affair. Deborah had a reputation for losing her anger, and a number of acquaintances suggested that she had a darker side to her polished persona. Had she learned of Lyla's presence, her rage could have led her to face Lyla, with disastrous results. However, there were also grounds to question Deborah's role. She had no known violent past, and she had been cooperative, if a little reserved, during the investigation. Her oldest son, who recalled her being home that night, helped to partially support her tenuous alibi. Even as the evidence against Alan grew, the persistent suspicion that she had contributed to the crime brought another level of complexity to the case, requiring the investigators to expand their investigation. The case against Alan Hayes had reached a turning point by March 8, 2008. Detective suspicions were validated by forensic examination of the gunshot found in Lyla Porter's body. Alan's military weapon was the source. Conveniently positioned to imply a suicide, the weapon, which Alan had reported missing a week prior to the murder, was discovered at the site. However, the crime lab's painstaking investigation turned up Alan's fingerprints on the gun's grip, damaging evidence that he was unable to deny. The surveillance film was the last nail in Alan's coffin. His actions on the night of the murder had been pieced together by detectives, who had followed his automobile to within blocks of Lyla's home during the crucial hours. The timeline was further cemented when gunpowder residue was discovered on his jacket, further implicating him. Lynch and his team knew the truth, even if Alan insisted he was innocent and that the evidence was circumstantial. Alan had the means and the motivation to murder Lyla Porter. The Hayes family was asleep when the arrest was made early on March 8, 2080. In an effort to lessen the impact of the incident on Alan's two young sons, Lynch had called for the warrant to be executed at daybreak. However, no amount of preparation could lessen the impact of what was about to happen. Deborah answered the door of Alan's suburban home when the officers arrived, looking confused in her slippers and robe. Alan was handcuffed and led out after giving her some time to comprehend what was occurring. The youngsters stood at the top of the stairs, their faces white with terror and confusion, woken by the ruckus. Deborah's face changed from shock to rage, but it was not obvious if she was angry at Alan or the officers. As he was loaded into the back of a patrol car, Alan remained calm, but his eyes showed signs of increasing panic. The neighbors started whispering to each other as they stepped onto their porches and peered through the curtains. His meticulously planned life was coming apart in front of everyone, and the once admired soldier was now a guy characterized by scandal and suspicion. Alan was charged with first-degree murder upon returning to the station. In sharp contrast to his earlier attitude during questioning, he was eerily silent during the booking process. He asked for a lawyer right away, but there was no reason to question the strength of the evidence against him. Despite being suspected of being a co-conspirator at first, Deborah was not officially accused since there was insufficient proof. The detectives and the community were left to guess about her potential involvement in the case because her role was unclear. Was she another victim of Alan's deceit and treachery, or had she participated in the cover-up? For now, the truth was still elusive. The community was left reeling as the sun rose over Hanover's peaceful streets. For everyone concerned, Alan Hayes' arrest signaled the start of a protracted and agonizing journey. Hayes was previously a well-respected member of the community. The case was far from ended for Detective Lynch, but there was no doubt that the complex web of betrayal, deception, and love that resulted in Lyla Porter's death had permanently altered the lives of those left behind. In August 2009, Alan Hayes' trial got underway, bringing global attention to a story that had already captured the interest of the tiny town of Hanover, New Hampshire. Expectations were high in the courtroom, which was crowded with reporters, interested citizens, and individuals who had been directly impacted by the catastrophe. A gloomy, haggard face replaced the once respected state trooper's clean-cut appearance as he sat at the defendant's table. As the prosecution exposed the complex web of treachery and murder, Alan's eyes remained focused downward, bearing the weight of his decisions in every tense movement. The case was straightforward for the prosecution. Alan was portrayed as a desperate guy by Assistant District Attorney Marlene Carson, a seasoned litigator known for her unrelenting approach in high-profile cases. She meticulously developed the tale of a state trooper who would put everything on the line for an affair with a co-worker, only to murder her when she threatened his meticulously planned life. Carson underlined Alan's financial motivations, emphasizing how Deborah Hayes' recent $500,000 inheritance had grown to be a significant consideration. In addition to making the affair public, a divorce would deprive him of the financial security he desired. Forensic evidence played a major role in the prosecution's case. Carson described the crime scene, the gunpowder residue on Alan's jacket, the ballistic match between the deadly bullet and his service weapon, and the surveillance tape showing him close to Lyla's house the night of the murder. Alan was further portrayed by each piece of evidence as a man who was besieged by his own behavior and resorted to violence in order to preserve his reputation. When Emily Porter, Lyla's adolescent daughter, took the stand, it was a turning point. The emotional toll that the affair and subsequent murder had taken on Emily's young life was revealed in her heartbreaking testimony. Emily described the fights she had heard between Alan and her mother in the weeks before the murder. She described how Lyla had become more agitated and nervous, frequently pacing the house late at night, while her voice wavered but she stayed calm. Emily's account provided the jury with insight into Lyla's last days, which were characterized by anxiety and annoyance as she came to terms with the risky direction her relationship with Alan had taken. Emily's testimony shed light on the conflict between Alan and Lyla in addition to her mother's mental health. Days before the murder, she recalled hearing Alan's voice rise during a fight with her mother. Even though Emily wasn't fully aware of the situation at the time, her story gave the prosecution's story a very intimate touch. The court was silent as Emily, who was now living with her aunt and uncle, sobbed as she struggled to deal with the betrayal that had destroyed her family and lamented the death of her mother. Under the leadership of lawyer Paul Grayson, the defense attempted to undermine the prosecution's case. Calm and calculating, Grayson claimed Alan was being set up. Inquiring into Deborah Hayes' movements on the night of the murder and her suspected jealousy over the romance, he named her as a possible suspect. Deborah was portrayed by Grayson as an unstable woman who was driven to extreme lengths, claiming that she had much more to lose emotionally than Alan. Grayson also made an effort to discredit the forensic evidence by claiming that detectives had tampered with or handled the murder scene improperly. He discounted the relevance of the gunpowder residue, calling it inconclusive, and contended that Alan's fingerprints on the weapon may have been transferred under innocent circumstances. But when Deborah Hayes testified under immunity, the defense's plan fell apart. One of the pivotal moments in the trial was her testimony. Deborah presented herself as a devastated woman struggling with the shame of her husband's adultery, while remaining composed but clearly shaken. She explained that she had found out about the affair just before Lyla was killed, but instead of acting out in rage, she had decided to speak to Alan in private. The defense's attempts to accuse Deborah were successfully undermined by her poise and the constancy of her testimony, which portrayed her as a victim rather than a criminal. Additionally, her testimony provided insight into Alan's behavior during the weeks preceding the murder. He was reclusive and anxious, according to Deborah, and frequently left the house late at night without giving a reason. Although she had hoped to mend their marriage for the benefit of their kids, she told the jury that she had felt Alan was losing his mind. A devastating depiction of Alan Hayes had been shown to the jury by the time the prosecution rested its case. Together, the forensic evidence, the emotional testimonials, and the financial motivation painted a picture of a man who had gone to extreme lengths to defend himself. Given Deborah's strong evidence, the defense's efforts to raise doubts were unsuccessful. The verdict was returned by the jury on a clear October morning in 2009. The air was thick with expectancy, and the courtroom was tight. Once a cornerstone of the community, Alan Hayes stood still as the foreman announced the verdict, finding him guilty of first-degree murder. There was no opportunity for leniency because the sentence, life without the possibility of parole, was imposed quickly. The state police force was rocked by the verdict. Alan's colleagues were forced to deal with the betrayal of one of their own, even though many had attested to his professional competence. The disclosure of Alan's behavior had a lasting impact on a department that was founded on honesty and trust. The ruling was a bittersweet occasion for Emily Porter. It gave her mother a sense of justice, but it was insufficient to make her loss any less painful. Emily started to rebuild her life after moving out of state to live with relatives. Emily became a champion for victims of domestic violence and betrayal after being moved by her mother's bravery and the tragic events that transpired. She also spoke out about the terrible effects of unbridled desperation and manipulation. Now that she was not burdened by her marriage, Deborah Hayes left Hanover to avoid the rumors and criticism of the locals. The wounds from Alan's treachery persisted even after she made an effort to move on, keeping her permanently linked to a case that had destroyed her family. The story of Lyla Porter and Alan Hayes serves as a terrifying reminder of how desperation and passion treachery can result in unspeakable actions. Those who witnessed the trial are still troubled by its heartbreaking revelations and moving statements. An example of the delicate equilibrium between devastation and love. Why would someone go to such lengths? Was Alan's treachery motivated only by a fear of being discovered, or were there more sinister secrets at play? Even after justice is done, there are still unanswered issues in the tiny hamlet of Hanover. Watch this space for more tales that reveal the darkest recesses of the human heart and peel back the layers of human conduct. To remain up to date on our daily news and explore another incredible case involving a Hollywood actress's covert affair with a well-known director that turned into a fatal scandal, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check it out and let us know what you think in the comments section below.